I attended Juilliard. I'm a graduate of Harvard Business School. I travel quite extensively. I lived through the Black Plague, and I had a pretty good time during that. I've seen The Exorcist about 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time I see it. Not to mention the fact that you're talking to a dead guy.
Got about 5 or 6 great starts here. I got one idea that I'm especially psyched out of my mind about.
This deck is built with 5 legendary commander options that you can choose between, offering 3 different difficulty levels for play, allowing different deck strategies to be altered, and giving newer players the ability to learn the function of alternate playstyles.
That is why I won't do 2 shows a night anymore, babe. I won't do.
For the easy difficulty, you have Muldrotha the Gravetide and Tassiger the Golden Fang. This is for easier skill level. The deck is more consistent and very efficient. The deck offers a flexible strategy and is well focused for these 2 commanders. For the medium difficulty, you have Brokos, Apex of Forever, and Urok the Desecrated. These 2 give the deck a medium skill level, offering an alternate playstyle. This deck is well focused with these 2 commanders. The deck's flexibility is at 70%. You play these commanders based on the board state, and as a player, you must become more political in the game. For the hard difficulty, you have Archelos, Lagoon Mystic. In order to play with this commander, you have to use Archelos to stall your opponents through combat in the early game. This is for your personal time while you set up your board state and fix your mana base to reach your win conditions. This commander requires an expert level skill of play. The deck becomes 50% flexible. Aggressive decision making is required. You must study the table at all times. As a player, this deck requires pinpoint removal. This deck runs at high strategy focus. That means every decision you make has to be focused and for your greater strategy. As a player, you must be able to read your opponents, and you have to be patient with your turns.
That is one big pile of shit.
This deck is 89% casual and 100% fun.
This place reminds me of Santa's workshop, except it smells like mushrooms and everyone looks like they want to hurt me.
We start with the mana ramp and fixing cards. First we start with Soul Ring and the classic Rampant Growth. We have Shakira Tribe Elder, 3 Visits, which can find Zagoth Triome from our deck. We have Dreamscape Artist, one of the underrated cards of the deck. Also, the classic Kodama's Reach, and Fairhaven Elf. And Cultivate. We also have Harrow. And to spoil the sub-theme of the deck, we have Awakening Zone. And lastly on the list, we have From Beyond, which can tutor 4 Eldrazi creature cards.
Is no one else going to acknowledge how crazy this is?
Now on to our draw and tutor cards. We start with Sensei's Divining Top. We also have Sylvan Library, which later on, you will see a stupid good combo that goes with it.
Did you hear that?
We have Coiling Oracle. It can ramp you, but in most cases, its ETB effects draws you a card. We also include Baleful Strix, and cards like these make Muldrotha the Gravetide a much better creature. We include Factor Fiction, just for the nostalgia factor. Our first tutor card, we have Mythos of Brokos. This is a great card, and it's fun. We also include Gerard's Orders to help our little reanimator package that we have in this deck. We include Tasker the Golden Fang. And we also have Kiora the Crashing Wave. Her negative ability allows us to draw a bit and maybe help us ramp out. Her +1 is just a bit of a stall, and her ultimate can help us win the game if we get there by flooding 9/9 tokens on the board. We also include Kiora, Master of the Depths. Her -2 ability lets us dig from the top of our deck for a creature or land card, and it feeds our graveyard. Her +1 ability lets us tap down threats and or our commander, while letting us untap a land for a little benefit. Her ultimate can spam our board with a few 8/8C critters, and possible take out a threat or 2. And finally, we have Sire of Stagnation, who is a bit underrated in this deck, but people answer him most times, but we do have some fun tricks that work great with him. Here, we have our removal package, starting with the cute and adorable Ravenous Chupacabra. Now on to Hero's Downfall. And Never to Return, where Never is our hard removal. And you also have Return, which can exile a card from a graveyard. It nets you a 2/2 derpy zombie token. We also have Ruinous Path with its Awaken ability, if you need it. We also include Murderous Rider with its Swift and Adventure mechanic that we want. We include the classic Putrefy. We have Status and Statue, where Statue is our hard removal, and Status for a combat trick against Hexproof. We have Eat to Extinction, which lets us exile indestructible creatures, and lets us finagle the top card of our library if we want it in our graveyard. And we have Sever the Bloodline, which is a solid removal against indestructible creatures, but is strong against token strategies. And it has Flashback. Then we have Obnixilis Reignited, where usually when you cast him, most of the time, you're using his -3 ability to get rid of a threat. His +1 lets you draw a card and lose a life, and his ultimate becomes a great Punisher mechanic if you can pull it off. Then we have Ascetic Slime for some non-creature removal. And at the end of our removal list, we have World Breaker. This card hits all the same targets as Ascetic Slime, and it happens at cast. Also, it has a recursion ability attached to it.
What do we got here tonight, kids?
Now, on to our board wipe selection. The first two cards I present you with are more combat tricks, but are just as effective. Starting with Aetherize. And we have Aether Spouts. Continuing with Nightmare Unmaking. We also have Overwhelming Forces. This card only hits one player and draws cards equal to the creatures destroyed this way. And in most games, we have that one player who just overwhelms the board with tokens, zoo-style creatures, or mana dorks. So this card is pretty solid. Then we have the classic Decree of Pain and our beloved Plague Wind. We also include the fan favorite in Garruk's Wake. And we end this list with Bane of Progress, our board wipe for enchantments and artifacts.
I hate you! I hate you. Hate, 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 hate. Double hate. Loathe entirely.
On to our reanimation and graveyard recursion package. We start with Animate Dead. On to Eternal Witness. We have Tameo, Collector of Tales, where we use her -3 ability to pull cards from the graveyard most times. Her +1 ability is okay, unless you have Sensei's Dividing Top and Sylvan Library to take advantage of the ability. Her static ability is just extra sauce against other certain decks, archetypes, and strategies. Then we have the old school Zombify. Vigor Mortis. We enjoy a creeping renaissance with Flashback. We also include Beacon of Unrest. And we feature Muldrotha the Gravetide for that graveyard spice to grab a slew of different permanents from the graveyard. And finally, we usher in Artisan of Kozilek.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Now, for the fun stuff and deck support cards.
Let's go for it!
Starting with Clever Impersonator, to copy that non-land permanent you need at the time you have it. Then we have the underrated Spitting Image. We also have Underrealm Lich, that makes that stupid combo I mentioned earlier with Sylvan Library, which in increments of 3, you get to select the best 3 cards out of the top 9 cards of your deck, and feed your graveyard at the same time. And you get the best 2 out of 6 cards with Sire of Stagnation whenever an opponent plays a land. And with Obnixilus's +1 ability, it makes his ability more efficient. Then we have my favorite Simic card of all time, Unexpected Results.
Anyone who says differently is selling something.
Which can hit big, bomby, beefy creatures, your asymmetric board wipes, a tutor card, or maybe a land. This card can also hit a dud card as well. Who knows what you'll get? This card is quite unexpected and fun. It's high risk, high reward. Then we include Leyline of Anticipation, just for some flash. We also have Yarok the Desecrated, doubling triggered effects of cards like Coiling Oracle and Sire of Stagnation. Helps out with Muldrotha and her casting ETB cards from the graveyard. And we have, at the end of this list, Brokos, Apex of Forever, my favorite Mutate card. And for our big creatures and win conditions section of the deck, we start with Avenger of Zendikar for some interesting token shenanigans. We also have Rampaging Balos, a 6/6 creature that puts 4/4s on the board. We also have Emrakul, the Promised End, for the fun of trolling our opponents with a big 13/13 creature. We love Rite of Replication in this deck, for the hope we get to kick it on Avenger Zendikar, even though we do have other targets, and our opponents do too. And we end the list on the infamous Villainous Wealth as our one and only X-Spell to win with our opponent's toys.
I'm an idiot!
And for our land section, we're going to speed run through this part. We have 4 islands, 5 forests, 4 swamps, Blooming Marsh, Linewar Wastes, Tainted Wood, Creeping Tar Pit, Drowned Catacombs, Woodland Chasm, Hinterland Harbor, Yavimaya Coast, Thornwood Falls, Temple of Mystery, Halimar Depths, Treetop Village, Zagoth Triome, Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, Fabled Passage, Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, Warped Landscape, Field of Ruin, Sanctum of Eternity, Temple of the False God, and finally, Gyre Reach Sanitarium.